What is underneath your office?
Back in 2019, the NAACP and the Clearwater Historical Society reached out to us and said, hey, your property was built on what used to be a church and an African-American cemetery, and the graves were supposed to be exhumed, but we believe that they left some behind.
Talk through the creation of the insurance company.
It started as a staffing company in 1981. And so back in 2003, my grandfather and dad started their own insurance company, capitalized it. I joined back in 2008.
Do you have an extra chip on your shoulder to prove yourself that you weren't just getting the job because you're the son, but also you're the man for the job?
Oh yeah, you've got to prove yourself, but you've got to earn it. If you want the respect of your team, that's just putting in the work and grinding. And
what's been the hardest decision you've had to make as the co-president?
Anytime you're making a decision that will affect your employees, it is my duty, as in my role, I need to do what's best for the company. And sometimes you inevitably have to have conversations, right?
Over the next 5 years, what are your big vision plans for the company? What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of the Elliott Caldwell Podcast on Successful DNA. Super excited about the day. I have my friend and the president of Frank Crum Insurance, Matt Crum, in the building. Matt, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be here.
In the news, I have seen some things going on. What is underneath your office in Clearwater?
Well, it's been in the news quite a bit. We've been on 60 Minutes, CBS. It's kind of gotten national attention a little bit, not attention that we really wanted or expected. Back in 2019, the NAACP and the Clearwater Historical Society reached out to us and said, hey, your property was built on what used to be a church, an African-American church, and an African-American cemetery. And the graves were supposed to be exhumed, but we believe that they left some behind. And we were like, that's almost like, if you've seen our building, you've seen our building. It's a campus, and that kind of construction used to be a Montgomery Ward and a few other things prior to that. And we thought it was kind of impossible that they left any remains down there, given the amount of construction that's happened on the property. But we went through and we did what they call ground penetrating radar. So they walk through, and it's kind of this machine that looks like a lawnmower, and look under the ground, and sure enough, there were what they call disturbances, quite a few of them. And they expanded the search, and they found, I think it was 323 disturbances. And then so they go to the next phase. You bring in archaeologists, and we were working with the city and some other groups, and they call what they do the next phase, what's called ground truthing. And they basically, it looks like an archaeological dig. And on a small section of it, and sure enough, it's human remains on a big chunk of our property, and it's an African-American cemetery. So what's going on now with that? So we're working with. I've learned a lot about this. That's something I never knew I would need to know about. So we're working with, the community, the organizations that represent the community, the NAACP, the Clearwater Historical Society, some others, trying to figure out what's the best thing to do. We were are a little bit, that's a dicey story, working with the city and the CRA to try to figure out what to do, whether it's putting a memorial on our property, whether you exhume the remains, put them somewhere else. We're kind of going through that process. I think the community and us were aligned that we'd like to remove the remains and put them somewhere more appropriate. I think the city's probably okay with that. It's just now it's a matter of who's responsible to do that. And
one article I read said that 300 and change number, but then it said they could possibly be up to 500 or so. Do you think it's that 300 number, or do you think it's the 500 number?
We've scanned the property and looked under, they're under Missouri Ave, which is the street that runs right in front of our property. They're mostly in our parking lot. So there's no way to tell if they're under the building. And frankly, I don't think there is. We talked to the architect, and they actually had to clear out a lot of the fill, and the footers in our building are really deep. And so if they were there at one point, I don't see how they're there now.
Yeah.
And I think we've scanned it. I think there were 500 plus graves originally in the cemetery. I think they removed some of them this was back in 1950, 1952. I just think they didn't remove all of them. Well, I know they didn't remove all of them.
Yeah. And so who was supposed to move them and who dropped the ball?
So don't quote me on this because this has been a 6-year saga and we keep finding out more and more. But what happened, it's a terrible story. Back in the, first part of the 20th century, obviously there was segregation. And the city and the county realized that they needed to start investing in the African-American communities, putting actual roads, utilities, things like that. So they started doing that, but they would assess the property owners. Like if they built a road next to your property, they would assess you. And this church, I forget right now, I can't remember the name of the church. Maybe it's St. Matthew's. I think it's St. Matthew's Church. They assessed him $1,800 back in 1950 for the privilege of the city and county building a road next to the property. The church couldn't pay it, so they sold to I think 3 developers the property for $15,000. The developers told the city that they would remove the remains if they were to develop the property. Obviously, they never did develop the property. And to put a cherry on top to make it even worse, the developers who bought the property in 1950, I forget the exact year, bought it for $15,000. They sold it 2 years later, I think, for like $150,000. So it's not a great story. It's not a good look. But the real issue that we've run into is when this building was built, it was built by a company. We didn't build the building, we bought it in 99. And the CRA was offering incentives for them to build that building because it's an opportunity zone and it's within the CRA. As part of the due diligence, they found out there used to be a cemetery on this property. And so in the development agreements, the city guaranteed and warranted that all the remains had been moved.
Gotcha.
That is the issue at hand, and that is why we are currently have taken legal action against the CRA, unfortunately.
Yeah, because at this point, okay, so the CRA did that. And then at this point, the value of the building is going to be undervalued because of that. And I'm assuming it's not cheap to move 300 graves to another site.
No, it'll be when our estimates are somewhere in the high 7 figures, low 8 figures to move those remains.
Dang, high 7 figures, low 8 figures. Wow. Where will they move them to? Do you know?
To be determined.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing coordinating with any descendants. You've got to let people know. They've got to, agree with it. There's a lot of moving pieces to it.
Well, that's a crazy story. So we'll dig into the business world. What you guys have built, and then what your grandpa's built, and then what your dad's built. Talk through the creation of the insurance company. Started with your grandpa, and now you and your sister run the day to day. Maybe the elevator pitch on the startup of the company and the largest private insurance company in the country. Is that right?
Professional employer organization. So we're one of the biggest, not the insurance. So we've actually, it's a bit complicated to have an elevator pitch for our organization because we've got, 5 different companies. I'll give you the fastest way I possibly can. So it's actually a misconception. My grandfather wasn't the founder. My dad was actually the founder, my dad and grandfather. So my dad, it started as a staffing company in 1981. So my dad was selling staffing. They decided they wanted to start their own business. So my grandfather had just sold out of a business that he had owned. So they started a staffing company in 81. That evolved into what in the 80s was called employee leasing, which is now professional employer organizations today. So they started an employee leasing company back in the 80s, grew those 2 businesses. Every business needs workers' comp. The PEO is one of the things that we offer is risk management and workers' comp. The market was getting hard, is what we call it in the industry, where coverage just wasn't available. And so back in 2003, my grandfather and dad started their own insurance company, capitalized it, and kind of the rest is history. And then I joined back in 2008. Since then, we've started a managing general agency, which I can explain what that is, and we started an insurance agency as well, just to kind of, and I know you guys do this a lot. It's while the businesses are different, they're complementary and they're in the same ecosystem. And so each business makes the other business more valuable and the services that we provide more valuable.
And was your grandpa born and raised here?
My grandfather was not. He was born in Alabama and they bounced around. So my dad and grandfather when my dad was a kid. My grandfather was in the military, and then he was J.C. Penney's. He worked for J.C. Penney, so he bounced around all the Southeast for a while. But my dad was born in Florida, Pensacola, Florida. And so my kids are I'm so sorry. My grandfather was born in Pensacola. And then my dad was also born there, but they bounced around when my dad was a kid.
And then when did they settle in Pinellas?
70s, probably. Yeah.
And then obviously you were born and raised here in Pinellas. Where'd you go? In a countryside high school?
For part of it. So I played hockey growing up and in college. And so back then I was like one of the early, and now hockey's huge in Florida, but it was pretty early days. I remember, funny story, my mom was from Texas. My dad played college football. My grandfather played college football. And so I was playing football as a little kid. And I went to a Lightning game, one of their inaugural seasons, and I fell in love with it. And I said, Mom, I want to play hockey. And she's like, no, it's too dangerous, which is hilarious, given that I was playing football. But eventually she relented. And I played hockey in Florida growing up. And then I left, I went junior, senior year to a boarding school in Connecticut.
I think we're going through that right now. My 5-year-old went to a Lightning game. And since then I got him one of the little goalie helmets at the gift shop and a little softball and a hockey stick, like a soft hockey stick. And he's been playing every day.
It's big down here, man.
He wants to play. I'm gonna let him play in the fall.
You should.
So, yeah.
I coach. I've got 3 kids, 9, 7, and about to be 2 in a month, a little under a month. And both the boys, we're put them in everything. My wife was a college volleyball player. I played college hockey. And so we're like, you got to be on team sports. And so they've played everything under the sun, and they still do. But they're probably main sport. The sport they like the most is hockey. Yeah. So I'm kind of forced to coach now. So now that's what I do on my week.
So I coach the T-ball, but when it comes to hockey, I'm going to have to rely on you because I can't even skate.
Yeah, so, I kind of wish they played another sport that I didn't play, because then I wouldn't have there's really no reason for me not to coach at this point. Yeah. So if they played baseball or something, I think I made it up to coach pitch in baseball, so I have no business coaching baseball.
And then what year did you graduate? Trinity College, right?
08.
08, and then you got your master's at Tampa?
Yep.
And what'd you graduate there?
13.
I
went straight home. It was funny. I was going to go to Trinity's a pretty big feeder to Wall Street, and I was going to what I've found in my career, that this was probably the first, this happened in hockey and growing up too, is God opens doors. You just got to know to walk through them. And I finished my hockey career. I had an opportunity to go play pro over in Europe or go to work in New York in finance. And my grandfather had just passed away a couple of years before. I had worked in the business over summers. Like I'd come home and do an internship trying to sell or doing it in the different departments, and just decided it was time for me to come home and started working in the business. And then I started getting my MBA probably 2 or 3 years later, I think. Did it at night.
That was kind of where I was leading to. At what point did you grow up thinking that you would just join the family business, or was that a college
I wanted
thing?
to go play in the NHL.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
Yeah. We all turned pro in something other than sports.
Yeah. No, I wasn't sure. Honestly, like when I was raised, I would always either have a job like working at a hockey pro shop or working, moving furniture or doing menial stuff at the office. Growing up, I did not necessarily think I was going to be in the family business. As I got into college and started understanding what we did more. And what I think my dad did which was great, is I would come home and I would work in different areas of the company. So I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And so I worked in our legal department one summer, and turns out I hate reading contracts and filing things. So that was not for me. And then I tried to sell for our staffing company. Turns out I'm not a great sales guy. But then I did one kind of internship in the insurance company and just absolutely fell in love with everything that's insurance. And so that it was actually the right place for me to be. And, that's where I
fell in love with insurance.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a weird guy.
It's much more complicated. So we have a big internship program. So I think I just welcome them. They started on Monday. I think we've got probably 12 to 15 interns for the summer, and we do it's called a risk management internship. I think probably 9 of them are in the insurance company. And what's great, people think about insurance, you think about like homeowners, auto, things like that, and selling, your insurance agent. But like the technical transactions, like buying reinsurance and investing the capital that you have, and whether it's claims or underwriting or risk management, or product development. There's a lot of really cool things in insurance that at face value, when you think of insurance, is usually not the first thing that comes to mind.
When you right around there in 2010, 2013. At what point, what year do you remember when you were like full-time with the company?
2008.
2008, you were full-time?
Yeah, my dad, it was funny. Love you, Dad. I graduated and a bunch of my friends were taking like the summer to go travel Europe or something like that. And, my dad didn't come from anything. My dad and grandfather, my dad had a job when he was, mowing lawns at 5 years old. And he raised me similarly, not quite as hard as my grandfather did. But I said, Dad, I'd like to take like a month off and, go do something. And my dad's like, absolutely not. You have a week. So I had a week between graduating college and working full time, and I haven't looked back since. So,
what'd you start as in your first job in the company?
So, the insurance company, we were basically a self-insured. We self-insured the PEO. That was our one client, right? So the PEO has thousands of businesses, and so we effectively insured them. But our policyholder was the PEO, and so the insurance company I think had 10 employees when I showed up. So I started working for the insurance company, and it actually worked out really well because my dad and grandfather didn't have insurance background. So they had to hire a president to run it. And he was getting towards the tail end of his career. And so we kind of put a plan together, to basically train me and groom me to take over. And I think I became president of the insurance company. I was 29 in 2013 or 14, something like that. So I was young.
I've thought about that with my kids, like taking over one day. Did you have an extra chip on your shoulder to like prove yourself that you weren't just getting the job because you're the son, but also you're the man for the job?
Oh yeah, you've got to prove yourself, because I always joke, I'm a nepotism at its finest, but you've got to earn it if you want the respect of your team, and that's just putting in the work and grinding and hopefully you're up to the task of taking over. I think my dad, it was not a guarantee that I was going to end up taking it over by any stretch, and I had to earn that. But that just takes time, and like I said, you've got to earn it.
You'll be 41 this year.
Yeah.
So from 2008, what was like revenue in 2008, if you had to remember?
Guess. Oh God, for the insurance company?
For the whole company.
Ooh, so we got hammered in 2008. So that was most of our clients back then were, we did a lot of construction and contractors and Florida specific. So we were blowing and going in 2005, 6, 7, and then 2008 hit. So I started in May of 2008. So for the first two and a half years of my career, just everything, it just felt so hard. You hear all these stories about, business and people making buckets of money. And I'm like, God, it feels like you're running uphill in sand. And that was probably a great baseline for me, understanding how hard it can be. Because since then, it's been, compared to that, a lot easier. So we've probably, the insurance company's 10x what it was. So we were little. We were probably at $15 million of premium, maybe.
So you're at 150 now?
No, we're actually more than that. We'll in 2020, outside the we'll write $300 million total. So we're 20x in the insurance company. And then the PEOs probably tripled in size.
So that's obviously a lot of growth in the past 15 years. You're almost doubling every year for the past 15 years.
We've been growing. The insurance company's been growing a lot. The PEO's more steady. It was a bigger entity at the time. But the PEO's experienced anywhere from, 8 to 12% growth on an annualized basis. Probably if you look at the last 15, 20 years, the insurance company, we really hit our stride. The first few years, not doing much. And then we put in other lines of business and started diversifying and doing things. We really started kind of hockey sticking back in 2013.
Are there any, like in those past 15 years with the growth being so strong, are there any like hidden pain points or like behind the scenes moments that almost broke it?
Never almost broke it. No. Are there pain points? Oh my God.
The past 15 years, what are those that you've had to work through?
Everything from operational inefficiencies. So it's, investing in systems. I mean, we just 2-3 weeks ago, this is recency bias, but we just went live. We completely replaced our entire tech stack. It was a 2-year project, and our team did a fantastic job, but that was a lot of headaches. And insurance is a really capital intensive, but probably more so than almost any other industry. You need a lot of capital if you're going to grow. And so we've had to pour money back in. So any money we make, we pour right back into the company.
Where's most of that money going when you invest back in?
Surplus.
Cool.
So typically an insurance company, you want to write 1-to-1. So if I have $1 of surplus, I can write $1 of net written premium. If you grow your premium by 10%, you either need to buy more reinsurance or you need to find 10% to basically go dollar for dollar, typically.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
In your business, what keeps you up at night the most?
For our business, probably the tail of some of the lines that we write. So we've gotten hit pretty hard. I think we're pretty much through it now, but have you heard of construction defect?
Mm-mm.
Probably. Okay. So it's a big problem in Florida. Like lots of people are talking about homeowners insurance, the need for insurance reform and auto insurance. But for construction defects, it's a challenge for contractors working on like these big, developments like the D.R. Hortons and the Pulte's, like the tract homes. What'll happen is, an attorney or a public adjuster will walk through a neighborhood and say, hey, let me test if you have any water in your house or something like that. And then you'll get 50, 100, 200 lawsuits, and they bring every single contractor that stepped foot on that job site. So there will be a multi-million dollar lawsuit going on for water damages. And everybody from the stucco guy to the roofer to the window and door painter, the tile guy, the landscaper, the foundation guy, everybody's pulled into this construction. And so it's just the litigation's crazy. The settlements, it's a lot. And you don't know about that. That they just did tort reform. We didn't know about that for probably 8-9 years after the policy was written. So it's the cake was baked back in the teens, and now we're getting claims today. So that keeps me up at night. But I think we've mitigated it.
Support those contractors on the legal side.
Yeah, we got to pay for it. Yeah. That's what the insurance for is, defense and then indemnity. If they are determined to be liable, we got to pay for it. Yeah.
You and your sister run the company day to day now.
Yeah. My dad's still there.
Yeah. And then how has that worked with just working with family? And I'm sure there's pros and cons sometimes, but how do y'all handle that?
Well, my dad, my sister, and I could not be more different. And it's been a blessing. It truly has, working with the two of them. What I think has helped us, it would have been more challenging if we had one company, and splitting up responsibilities. We all have different skill sets. So my sister runs our staffing company, and she does some of the operations like payroll, compliance, customer support. On the PEO side, I run exclusively the insurance company. My dad and sister are on the board. They've never worked a day in their lives in the insurance company. And so I kind of have free reign of all the insurance operations. And then we kind of split. I run, about half the PEO. And then my dad takes what he wants still. Let's call him an executive chairman. He's still CEO, but he still comes in every day. He brings his dog to work. He's got a black lab, and I don't see him ever retiring. But there have been, I guess the nice thing about working in a family business is that you're, at the very least, your interests are aligned, right? Yeah. You want the company to grow. Your collective net worths are largely tied up into this business. And so, my father and I can get in a knockdown, drag out fight over something, and, a screaming match, which has happened many times over the years. However, at the end of the day, we're trying to do what we think is best for the company. And so makes things a little bit easier, I think.
And when that was 2019, 2020, you became president?
So I became president of the insurance company in 2013. I think it was 13. And then I became co-president of the PEO. I was always VP and had some areas of responsibility in the PEO. Became co-president of the PEO right around then. I think 19 or 20. Yeah,
that's what it was. And what's been the hardest decision you've had to make as the co-president? And kind of what's it taught you about leadership?
Man, that is a hard question.
Guys, I wanted to introduce to you our done-for-you Airbnb investing service called B&B Turnkey that has massive tax implications. It's basically an investing service that allows you to invest in cash-flowing Airbnbs and not do any of the work. It's best explained in 3 phases. Number 1, we find, analyze, and underwrite the property. In phase 2, we handle all the interior design and construction. And then phase 3, we manage the property on the back end. The best part is most of our clients qualify for the short terminal loophole of the IRS tax code. This allows for average clients to write off over $200,000 in depreciation on their tax bill. For more information, click the link in the description to connect with our team. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the episode.
First thing that comes to mind is usually personnel related. Any challenges, the more people you have, we have like 550 odd employees. Anytime you're making a decision that will affect your employees negatively, or an employee, or letting somebody go, I don't care if it's even if it's the right call, it's a difficult decision. There's difficult conversations to have. And frankly, as it is my duty, as in my role, I need to do what's best for the company. And sometimes, you inevitably have to have those conversations. You have to have those conversations, right?
It's definitely hard. We're like my wife's best friends are VP of marketing. It's like hiring friends is tough, because in the end, I have to do what's best for the company. I have to do what's best for my business partner, my wife, my kids, so do you. But so it's like hard but you also care about, their kids and, your workers' kids. And so I make a lot of decisions where I'm constantly thinking about, employees and their kids and their families, not just the bottom line. So it's tough sometimes, because you hire a lot of friends too.
Oh yeah. I was thinking about it this morning. I was driving in. I've got a bunch of friends. Only one is my direct report, and he and I have a really close relationship. And so it works. And we had a long, heart to heart before he came on board. I was like, I know you can do this job. I think, you're going to be successful at it. And when he first came on, he didn't report up to me. He earned his way. So he came in and he's actually excelled. And so now he runs a department and he reports up to me. And then we've got family too. I've got nieces and nephews and cousins that work for the company. And yeah, makes it challenging, but it's fun.
In the past, did y'all have any headwinds during COVID? Or was that kind of? For
like 3 months. It was wild. Thank God we thread the needle. I always say this, and we have worked on diversifying over the years, and we absolutely have. So me coming in in 2008, I was like, I'm never going to live through that again. That was stressful, because we got hit extremely hard, because again, we did a lot of construction in Florida in the Southeast, and no one was building anything back in 2008, 2009. We have diversified, but I will say a huge chunk of our business is still construction. We're nationwide, but our biggest footprint's in the Southeast. And you were here during COVID. Florida, COVID existed for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And so we were down 35% probably for, the 2 months that everything was shut down. But we actually ended up the year pretty close to even year over year, because it bounced back pretty quickly.
What like technology in the past 2 to 3 years, how has it impacted the insurance sector? Like, how are you guys adapting to it?
Oh my God, it's everything.
You just change your tech stack. So
yeah, we're across the board. So I'll speak to the PEO first. So we're like in any industry. I guarantee you in managing Airbnbs and property management, your customers, like the end customers and the people you're managing the properties for, their requirements and their expectations for your company are drastically different than they would have been for a company managing those properties 20 years ago, right? I'm assuming so. Same thing with us. Like, it used to be, hey, process my payroll, manage my benefits, write my workers' comp. Now it's applicant tracking and PTO tracking and employee training and like our tech stack, adding onboarding employees and the benefits administration software we have. We are a tech forward company now, and we spend more on tech. We've spent more on tech than anything else in our business, including like
payroll.
No, including any asset, including the building that you saw the other day. Our tech stack on the PEO is significantly more expensive than what we bought that building for, and the cost of the building. Same thing with the insurance company. So our end customer is obviously the businesses that we insure, but our kind of point customer is the agents, and we need to make it super, super easy and make them efficient at placing business and driving their costs down. And we leverage technology to do that. And so, the old monolithic insurance companies that didn't invest heavily into technology, they're struggling. They can't compete in the small business space. They can still compete in the really large risks, but small business technology is so important.
One thing from watching you from afar that I've noticed is like, you're kind of like the mayor of Pinellas County. There's no such thing, but you've done a really good job just building relationships with a lot of people. And now you're also a part of a lot of boards and a lot of, you do it takes a lot of hard work to do that as well. How has that network impacted what you've done?
At times it helps. It's great. For what I do, especially because we're nationwide, there's usually not a direct line of business opportunities, like the things I'm involved in. I think it's just a lot of it, most of the nonprofits I'm on, it's just trying to give back. And it's expanding your circle. And, I know you just joined YPO. I'm pretty heavily involved in YPO. That's just, it's a wonderful network of just great people. And I get a lot more personally out of it than I do professionally. I do get some professional benefits for it, but that's really not the driving force for why I do it. And our business is, I'm not going to say there's no benefit to it. Like the insurance company, like if you wanted to be a client of our insurance company, like I can't sell directly to you. You'd have to go to an agent and they would have to sell my product. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. That was in my notes, actually. Not just your involvement, but Frank Crum's involvement with local community initiatives. You have the golf tournament. Y'all do a lot.
Yeah, we try to.
What motivates your commitment to those efforts?
Giving back. We recognize we're part of, and we're privately held. So there's 3 shareholders, my dad, my sister, and I. And while we want to make a good life for ourselves, but we want to treat our employees right, and we want the place that they come to work, a place that they can be proud of, a place that they can be compensated well, a place that they are professionally, we fill their cup, and we feel like we're a part of this community and that we need to give back. And there's no shortage of really great nonprofits in the area, and so that's really the challenge: is where do you put your resources and where do you lean into? And so my sister's been on the board of HEP, Homeless Empowerment Program, which is an unbelievable organization. I've been on the board of the Y forever. My dad was previously on the board of the Y. We do Martinis and Matisse at the office, which is a huge fundraiser for Clearwater Free Clinic. It's something that we've just decided we're going to do and lean into.
With the podcast being on Successful DNA, like what have you learned that's inside of you, inside of your sister, your dad, your grandpa? Most of that was inside your grandpa and you're inside your dad.
Yeah.
And then now yourself and your sister is what has led to this growth. Like it doesn't happen overnight. What do you think's inside of you that has led to success?
I think it's different. I don't think there's, I'm a lot like my grandfather, but different in many ways. My dad and I are similar, but different. My sister, like I said, we're all different. And so I was thinking about that before coming on here. I don't think there's one template of, what an entrepreneur or a successful business person needs. I think you need to be able to recognize your strengths and leverage them. My strengths are different than my sister's, and which are different than my dad's. And you need to recognize your strengths, lean into those. And you also really, what's as important is recognizing your weaknesses and finding people and surrounding yourself with people who can support you and complement you. I think you got to be willing to take risks, calculated risks, not blind risks, not necessarily rolling the dice, but you've got to put a thesis together, put a business plan together, and go out and execute. And there's obviously, if any entrepreneur, any business owner, you're taking a lot of risk.
Yeah, I think that's a big part to everybody's success, because not a lot of people are willing to take risk. And so, like you said, it's got to be calculated. It can be just like willy nilly, let's go play roulette. But no one's willing to take that risk. A lot of people, everybody has great ideas.
Yep.
But you got to execute those great ideas.
And you've got to be willing to compete and grind. So we all grew up athletes, and that's, to me, you and I met at CrossFit. That's kind of what scratched that itch, that competitive CrossFit itch. I'm a very, very competitive person, and I know that about myself. And I like putting something out there as a company, as a group. We get our leadership team together every year. We do strategic planning, and we set a goal for the year. And yes, that's great. We're going to make more money if we hit this goal. But to me, there's something really satisfying and rewarding. And inside of me, it kind of fills my cup if I set a goal and I hit it. There's something about that, and it's just a competitive drive.
And I think that's what makes it easier to keep gaining success. Is the first risk-taking step is the hardest one to take. Mm-hmm. But we're constantly taking a risk in our companies, but then it gets easier and easier and easier every time, and we get better and better and better at it every time.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully you diversify more, so there's less risk for each decision you're making. Hopefully.
When you met with your leadership team this year, what was the 2025 goal?
So we do two separate strategic planning meetings. The fourth quarter for me is very busy because I've got the whole PEO. I run the strategic planning for the PEO and the insurance company. So the insurance company, outside the PEO, we wanted to hit $250 million in gross GWP. And we had a few other goals. I think we wanted to launch another product, which we should be launching in October. A goal of ours is always to be a top place to work. That's on the PEO too. We had a revenue goal for the PEO, and it's really less to do with marketing. That's our employees signaling to us that we're doing the right things and that we're listening to them. Like, I haven't found a better way to get feedback from the employees. And so we did miss it 1 year, which was a wake up call for us, but we've been on the Tampa Bay top place to work for like 14 years or 15 years or something like that. But, that's always kind of top of mind because I do not want to run an organization where the employees get burned out and the employees hate coming to work. If I'm not trying to squeeze every penny out of these employees. I want them to stay and like it.
And I noticed it yesterday, and it's very genuine. How many employees are on campus?
Depends on the day. We got a lot of flex schedule, but I would say 400 something.
And so I noticed yesterday, like, you made it a point where every time you walk by a team member, you said, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" And you made it, now is it in-depth conversations? No, but you could have easily, there's plenty of presidents and companies across the country that just ignore their team as they go by. Why do you take time to do that? And what else do you do to try to make them feel like they are important to the company?
They are important. I think, I don't know, it's the way I was raised. I think, I have a great mentor and example in my dad. He doesn't necessarily care to be the most successful guy. He wants to run a good business. He wanted to take care of his family growing up. We are a family company. We preach that. We talk about that a lot at town halls. We constantly, it is always top of mind is how can we treat our employees well, where it makes sense. Like, to me, like, our company is not the company culture where we're going to have ping pong tables and everything like that. But we want our employees to be treated really well. We want them to feel like family. We want them to feel like this is a work home for them. Because, like I always say, you got 24 hours in a day. You sleep for 8, give or take. You work for 8 of that, and then usually you got a drive of many employees an hour plus. And you don't have a lot of free time. So a huge chunk, a third of your life, at least during the work week, is spent at your job, assuming you're working 8 hours a day. Many work more. You've got to enjoy what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And frankly, yes, and we get our tenure. We don't have a lot of turnover. Sometimes we make wrong hires and they don't fit the culture, but it's better for the company when employees are bought in and everyone's rowing in the same direction. So I guess it's just kind of a natural thing.
And something I'm proud of, and I agree with you, just how the silent killer in companies is turnover. And so we were highly focused on that. And just over 100 employees now, like 103, I think. And, these 2 are probably about to quit today, but no one's left in 2025. And we're almost halfway through the year. And so
that's amazing. That's unusual.
Yeah. And so, like, now we try and go above and beyond, right, to take care of them. And I think what's unique about us that helps is we're so fast growing. It's exciting, and like, people want to be a part of something special.
There's opportunity to go up, different stuff every day. Yeah.
How else do you focus on retainment?
It's hiring, right? So at the start, we are very clear and vocal about our culture. And so if you're not a cultural fit, you're probably not going to work. And that's it. That's our culture that's right. That's what's right for us. It's not right for everybody. And the culture has to be genuine. And so we tried to hire with culture fit. And then it's being open and honest and clear. We're super communicative to our employees. Like, we've got, oh my goodness, we've got an internal, it's called Huddle, like an internal Facebook page. We've got an internal comms person. That is his whole job. All he does is internal communications, writes communications, writes articles and things like that. And we've got monthly and quarterly articles that go out to the employees. We've got, Tilly's that everybody loves. It's funny. I see every exit interview, and like, whether employees are retiring or whatever, one thing that they always love typically is they always love their team and they always love Tilly's. And you and I had lunch at Tilly's the other day, but that's something that we really invested in, and people love our favorite employee. I think the most popular employees in the company are the 7 people who work at Tilly's.
What came about? Explain what Tilly's is, and then how did that idea come about, and when did it come about?
Yeah, so we bought the building in 2005, and the building has a pretty big cafeteria in it. And my sister actually has a culinary background. She was gonna be a chef, so she was not gonna work in the business either. And she was running a cafe, working crazy hours while going to school to become a chef. And she basically asked my dad, she's like, Dad, I need like an 8 to 5 job to where I can go to school and do this. And then she kind of fell in love with the business, and the rest is history there. But with her background, we had the cafeteria. It was kind of running, and it was not great. It was burgers and hot dogs, and the employees, not many were going. And we're like, if we're going to have this big space and employ these, this staff, we're gonna make it nice. And what we do is we subsidize all the food. So basically, what the employees are paying is the true cost of food. So you can get like a nice meal for $4.50, $5, something like that there. And we invested in it, and now you saw it yesterday. It's slammed every day.
And then how do you justify the significant cost of that?
It's a benefit for the employees. I think I'm telling you, if we were to remove Tilly's, they'd be more upset than if we were to raise their or reduce our contribution to their health insurance. I'm telling you, they love it.
That's funny. Over the next 5 years, what are your big vision plans for the company?
I want to keep growing the insurance company. I think my long-term goal is to hit $1 billion in premium for the insurance company. We've got a lot of initiatives going on. I feel like I'm spinning a lot of plates right now, and I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. But this is kind of a chapter, and it's okay. I recognize that. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the PEO and the insurance operations, all the companies within the insurance operations, to grow, and really, I see market opportunity there.
Since you've been president, what are some of the most, what are the accomplishments you've been most proud of? Growing it from
think about growing an insurance company, and we're this little privately held, family-owned company, and we went from really, when I started working for the insurance company, like I said, we just self-insured the PEO. So it was all the PEO's customers we were insuring. Back in 2011, we started writing workers' comp outside the PEO. 2013, we started writing, general liability, and we've added a couple products. And so that was in 12 years, we've gone from 0 outside the PEO to, I think we've got 85,000 policyholders now. And that's hard to do in a market where you've got established players. We did it through technology. We made it really, really easy for our agents. That's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
How do you balance, I think I know the answer, but how do you balance the grind at work, but also staying healthy while also maintaining cut-through relationships at home?
It is the thing that I think about and weigh the most. I always try to picture myself sitting on my back porch when I'm, old, and looking back and did I do it right? Because everything's a give and take, right? So you either pour into your business. If you're not pouring into your business, or if you're pouring into your business, you're not taking care of your health necessarily. If you're not taking it, and you're not necessarily spending time at home. And so those are two, like I said, I've got 3 kids and a wonderful wife. That's the most important thing to me. And so I learned from my dad, that was a non-negotiable. He'd never missed anything. And I saw that he could run a business and do it. And he was the type of guy, I'm not like this. Back then we weren't so connected to our emails, but he walks in the door at 5:30, 6 o'clock, whenever he came home. It was no business. That's a little different now. I'm working at nights when the kids are in bed, sometimes things like that. But it's a challenge, and I think about it regularly. And it ebbs and flows. The cliche is work-life balance, and I don't think life is ever in balance ever. You're giving something. If you're pouring into your kids, if there's a season to where your kids need you and your wife needs you, and you're pouring into your personal and family life, something's got to give. That means you're not doing as much as you probably could at work. If you're doing it at work, you're probably not being as healthy and going to the gym as much as you could. If you're, spending a ton of time, at the gym, you're sacrificing time with your family or at work. And so I don't think there's a right answer, and I don't have the answer. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to be intentional about it and balance those things, because all three of those things are very important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that I have the same viewpoint that I don't really believe in life-work balance. I think it's like you just said, it's seasonal. There's going to be times where, we're going through this or that at work, and it's going to demand a 70-hour week.
Yep.
There's going to be times it's the opposite of that, where it demands the 30-hour week, and I can spend more time with the kids. Well, at the same time, I agree with you and your dad. Like, I'll never miss anything, which is a benefit, and I'm blessed to have the position that we in the job and the way it works. I'll travel 2 nights this year.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I've
wow. already
done it.
Oh,
so
wow.
unless I'm out at a dinner or something, I'll make bedtime and bath time every single night this year.
That's great.
So which what I wanted.
Yeah, especially with young kids, that's so important.
Yeah.
We have a 9-year-old, and I said this to my wife, and she hit me the other day. Well, when he turned 9 in December, and I go, we're halfway, and he's 18, and he's out of the house. I know kids stay till their mid-20s now, but theoretically, we're halfway. And she was like, why would you say that to me? I'm like, it's going fast.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Golly, I'll be 6 this year. So, it feels like yesterday they were born.
Mm-hmm.
Our parents always said it goes by fast.
Yeah.
It really does.
Until you're in it.
How do you stay in shape so much? What do you focus on there?
I make it a priority. I still play hockey at night from time to time. In men's leagues, I still try to CrossFit, not nearly as much as I used to, but I've got a Peloton at the house. I go run. What helped me is I used to, and when I was really big into CrossFit, having CrossFit competitions, planned for, I would actually, that would help, because I have something I'm shooting for, and I don't want to embarrass myself at a competition. So I actually just agreed with a buddy of mine. I hate running. I'm not built like a runner, but I've run a couple half marathons, and after a couple beers, he talked me into doing a marathon. And so I'm training for a marathon right now. Clearwater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's in January. So now it's really public. I'm doing it, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's a long way.
Yeah, I know. So I was just I was working out at home. I got a Peloton recently, because I have a gym at home, but we got flooded in Helene, and so I don't have a gym where I'm staying now. And so we bought a Peloton, and I was on it, and I did like a really long bike, and I hit 26.2 miles on the bike, and I was like, oh my God, this is a long way. I don't think I can run this.
How long did it take you to ride 26 miles?
Oh, I don't remember. I was doing like an hour and a half ride. So I was probably you're averaging 20 miles an hour. So probably a little over an hour.
Do you have any goals to finish the marathon in a certain amount of time, or
finish
just
it? Finish it. No, I'm being very humble about this. I need to finish it.
January, it might be a little chilly too.
Fine. Great.
I'd rather run in
Hell yeah.
I'd rather run in 30 degrees or 90 degrees?
30. All day. I'm a hockey player.
Yeah.
I'll take cold all day.
What about diet? How important is that to you?
Really important. You can't outwork a bad diet. So I eat pretty healthy. I try to be gluten-free. I used to do paleo. I'm not crazy strict. I'm intentional about what I eat. I usually don't cheat and grab candy and bad stuff. I would say this is cheating. I do have that cafeteria, and they know what I want to eat. And so I usually eat breakfast, lunch, and they'll even cook me dinner. And they know kind of how I want to eat healthy. So it's kind of cheating.
Yeah.
For me, it's easier than it is for most people, because I don't have to necessarily, I'm starving and I got to find something at the house and just grab something crappy.
I think that's the toughest part when it comes to eating clean, is how easy it is to not eat clean.
Yeah.
If you don't meal prep, you're screwed.
You got to be intentional about it.
Yeah. Because when it comes down to it, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
When you're hungry, you're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's end with this. Listeners out there, people that, whether they want to start a business or they're just not in a place of happiness in their position at work, whatever it may be, what advice would you have for them to take that risk and take that next step to do something they want to do?
That's a great question. It's a pretty deep question. Like I said, it's anything you do, even if it's changing jobs, it's a calculated risk. You're taking risks. So entrepreneurs take risk. Usually they've got capital involved. And I would argue most of the time it's a bigger risk. But if you're looking to change your job, that's a calculated risk. You could be comfortable in your job and you don't know what's around the corner. So it's just, to me, I've always, And I've seen this throughout my life, whether it's personally or professionally. And, you know, my father was a Methodist minister, so we're very faithful. God clearly opens doors, and it's really up to you to step through that door. And so I would say that as a faithful person, but more practically, you know, do your research. Don't be afraid to take calculated risks. And whether that's making a job jump or, you know, starting a business or something like that. In today's day and age, there's so much data out there and there's so much information. If you put in the work and the effort, you can be successful at so many things. You know, that's one thing that I've found being a part of YPO. It's amazing how there are so many successful people in so many different industries. It's wild how many different ways you can make money and different ways you can find success in this world. And so I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's awesome, my answer.
Well, thanks for coming. Guys, thank you for listening to another episode on Successful DNA. Matt, where can they find more information about you and your business?
fwcrum.com, insurance.com or frankcrum.com, or just find me on LinkedIn at Matt Crum.
Cool. Thanks for coming, bro.
Yeah, thank you.